It's funny how a half-eaten burger can mark the beginning of a day that threatens to unravel everything. There I was at Desert Diner, a weathered establishment just off the Phoenix Highway in Arizona, trying to enjoy a greasy meal after finishing my shift at Precision Auto Parts. The air was heavy with the smell of burned cooking oil and day-old coffee, the kind of aroma that lingers on your clothes for hours. From the corner, an old jukebox played a country song, its melancholic notes competing with the buzzing of the flickering neon sign outside. I found comfort here. It was peaceful, routine, nothing like the chaos I'd escaped from. For 2 years, I'd lived as Jake Carver, making a living fixing machines, nearly convincing myself that my past was buried. Nearly. The burger had gone cold on its paper wrapper when I heard the door hinges whine. I didn't bother looking up initially. These places always had people coming and going, usually truckers or exhausted travelers who weren't picky about their dining choices. But then I felt it, that unmistakable sensation of being watched, like ice sliding down my spine. Footsteps approached, measured and purposeful, moving in my direction. I took another drink of my soda, keeping my gaze fixed on the table's worn surface, praying it was nothing serious. A figure cast its shadow over my table. "Mr. Henry Voss," came a voice, crisp and calculating, as if sampling the name. My stomach clenched, but I maintained my composure. Looking up, I saw a lean man in an ill-fitting suit, around 40, with skin too fair for the Arizona desert. His hair was greased back, and his mouth wore an expression somewhere between arrogance and contempt. "Miles Tanner," he announced, extending a hand I ignored. "I was hired to locate you." I settled back, folded my arms. "You got the wrong person, friend. I'm Jay Carver. I repair machines, not play detective games with strangers." His expression remained unchanged. He invited himself to sit opposite me, placing his elbows on the table. "I don't think so, Henry. It took me months to find you. You're quite skilled at vanishing, I must say." My heart raced, though I maintained my poker face. Inside, I was reeling. 2 years spent carefully constructing this life, this fragile facade, and now some cheap-suited investigator was dismantling it piece by piece. I glanced toward the counter. Hank, the manager, was busy cleaning the grill, his massive frame turned away, feigning ignorance. Typical. He'd witnessed worse scenes than this and never bothered to intervene. "Look," I said, keeping my voice level, "I don't know any Henry Voss, and I'm not interested in playing games. Get out of here." Miles let out a dry, unsettling laugh and reached inside his jacket. My fingers instinctively moved toward the wrench in my pocket, a leftover habit from my factory work, but he didn't draw a weapon. Instead, he produced a small folding knife, flicking it open with practiced ease. The blade caught the neon light as he tapped it deliberately on the table, uncomfortably close to my plate. "Stay put, Jake, or Henry, or whatever name you're using these days. We need to have a conversation." The atmosphere grew tense. My heart pounded against my chest, but I maintained steady eye contact, refusing to show weakness. "Nobody brings a knife to a diner unless they're desperate," I announced, making sure Hank could hear. He glanced over briefly before returning to his cooking. "Typical." Miles leaned closer, his breath heavy with cheap liquor. "You could say I'm desperate. Your wife's offering good money to bring you back to Seattle. Does Clara Voss mean anything to you?" The name struck me like lightning. Clara. 2 years had passed since I'd heard anyone speak it, yet it still stung deep. I clenched my teeth, struggling to contain the memories threatening to surface. Miles noticed my momentary lapse, his smile growing wider. "Yeah, that's what I thought. She's got some legal matters to resolve, and you're the missing piece. Let's make this simple, shall we?" I pushed my plate aside, leaning in. "You're following a dead end, Tanner. I'm not your guy. Last warning, walk away." He remained unmoved, pressing the knife's point into the table, leaving a small mark. "This is your final chance," he countered. "I won't leave without what I came for." The jukebox stuttered, the music cutting out momentarily, and in that brief silence, I felt trapped. This wasn't some ordinary hired muscle. He knew things or believed he did. I gripped the wrench in my pocket tighter, the cold metal providing some clarity. I could end this quickly, but not here, not with Hank nearby, and countless witnesses on the highway. Hey folks, quick break in the story. Where are you tuning in from? Drop a comment below. I'd love to know. And if you're enjoying this tale so far, don't forget to hit subscribe. It means a lot, and believe me, the story's about to get even more intense. Miles cocked his head, waiting. Expectantly, I forced a calculated smirk, stalling for time. You're awfully far from your comfort zone, Tanner. Better get used to this desert heat, because whatever you're after isn't happening. His expression darkened as the knife stilled in his hand. We'll just have to see about that, he growled under his breath. In that moment, I realized my peaceful evenings at Desert Diner had come to an abrupt end. The atmosphere in Desert Diner had grown oppressive, the cooking oil vapors seeming to congeal into an inescapable haze. Miles Tanner remained seated across from me, his blade still positioned on the table, catching glints from the pulsing neon overhead. The jukebox had shifted to a melancholic country ballad about heartbreak and endless highways, the lyrics grating against my already frayed nerves. My hand stayed close to the wrench concealed in my pocket, not gripping it yet, but near enough to feel its reassuring presence. If he wanted conversation, I'd let him talk himself into trouble. So tell me, I said, settling back into the vinyl booth, what makes Clara Voss's story compelling enough to chase you all the way to Phoenix? Miles's tongue darted across his lips nervously before he snapped the knife, closed with a sharp click. He kept it palmed like a magician's prop rather than putting it away. She's in serious trouble, he explained. Lost everything, home, career, the whole lot. Claims you've got debts to settle. Henry says you disappeared, leaving her to deal with a mountain of legal complications. I let out a derisive snort while maintaining a neutral expression. That's quite the tearjerker. Still doesn't explain why you're hassling someone who's never heard of her. He tilted his head analytically, like he was solving a complex equation. Come on now, you know her well enough. Took half a year to track you down. Started with a lead in Boise. Someone spotted you mailing something. Followed your trail south. You're clever, I'll grant you that, but not quite clever enough. My chest constricted. A letter. Owen. I'd been meticulous, using different rural post offices each time, just to let my son know I was still alive. One careless moment, and this bloodhound had found my scent. I forced out a laugh to mask the rising panic. You're following shadows, Tanner. I'm just a mechanic. Nothing more. No letters, no Boise, definitely no Clara. He flashed that unsettling grin again, reaching into his jacket to retrieve a weathered photograph. With calculated precision, he slid it across the table, maintaining a firm grip on his knife hand. The image was fuzzy, monochromatic, clearly captured by surveillance equipment. It showed me at a postal counter, baseball cap drawn down, pushing an envelope into the mail slot. Despite the churning in my gut, I refused to touch the photograph. Nice attempt, I remarked. That could be anybody. Could be. He conceded, but we both know it's you. Clara's desperate these days, Henry. Legal teams are circling, creditors won't back off. That prestigious Lake Washington property repossessed. Now she's surviving in some pest-ridden apartment, barely making ends meet. She needs you back in Seattle to resolve the chaos you created. Something about shared properties, documentation, a business enterprise she can't access without your authorization. I examined the photograph intently, thoughts whirling. Shared properties. Voss Construction. I'd liquidated everything, or so I believed, channeling the proceeds into a concealed account before vanishing. Had she discovered some legal technicality, or was this merely a ploy to smoke me out? I pushed the image back toward him. That's her predicament, not mine. Why should I be concerned? Miles inched forward, his voice becoming venomous. Because she's not just seeking financial compensation. She's furious. Henry claims you deserted her and the boy. Owen isn't a college student now, 19 years old. She's got nothing left to lose, and she's convinced I can force you to confront her. If I fail, she's prepared to alert law enforcement. Fraud charges, desertion, whatever allegations stick. Owen's name struck me more powerfully than any blade could. My son. His image flooded my mind, that crooked smile from his childhood, his request for help with bicycle repairs. Those letters were meant to prevent him from assuming the worst, but I'd never responded to his messages, never revealed my whereabouts. Now Clara was wielding him as leverage. My grip tightened around the concealed wrench as I struggled to maintain composure. You're on a futile mission, I muttered darkly. Even if I were this Henry person, what's my incentive return to let her drain me? Financially, I'd prefer this cold burger. Miles rhythmically tapped his knife against the table. Perhaps choice isn't a luxury you have. I've gathered enough evidence to create serious problems. Law enforcement won't differentiate between Jake or Henry. They'll arrest you regardless. The menace, lingered, palpable and undeniable. I surveyed the diner's interior. Hank remained stationed at the counter, absently adjusting his dish rag over his shoulder, deliberately avoiding our corner. The scattered night owls remained absorbed in their meals, unaware of the tension. No assistance forthcoming. My thoughts raced through potential strategies. Should I flee once more, engage in confrontation, or remain seated and outmaneuver this cunning adversary? Miles reclined, savoring my discomfort. Just as I suspected, he remarked, "Now, shall we discuss your travel arrangements to Seattle?" I matched his stare, my expression unwavering and frigid. "You overestimate yourself, Tanner. Force my hand, and you'll face the consequences." His laughter erupted, sharp and dismissive, as he tucked the photograph away. "We shall see, but I won't depart without achieving my objective." The jukebox fell silent, leaving only the electric hum of neon signs and the distant rumbling of an 18-wheeler passing by. The weight of my past decisions bore down heavily, awakening a dormant fear I hadn't experienced in 24 months. This confrontation was far from concluded. The battle had merely begun. Miles Tanner's words hung heavily in the atmosphere, an inescapable presence. The desert diner's neon signs hummed softly above, but my thoughts drifted elsewhere, to a place of rain and shadows, far removed from this arid sanctuary. I needed to disorient him, create space for strategic thinking. Leaning forward, arms resting on the table, I began my narrative. "Let me share a story about an acquaintance." I spoke quietly, maintaining composure. "Someone I knew in Seattle. Perhaps it'll illuminate why you're pursuing a dead end." Miles arched an eyebrow, manipulating that knife between his fingers like a nervous habit. Ignoring his display, I continued. "This acquaintance, we'll name him Tom, possessed everything. A luxurious residence on Lake Washington, complete with expansive windows and private dock. Managed a successful construction enterprise, specializing in infrastructure projects, generating substantial income. Had a family, embodying the quintessential American success story. Seemed flawless, didn't it? But appearances deceived. The memory of that residence remained vivid. Raindrops cascading down those vast windows, transforming the lake into an indistinct blur. In those days, I answered to Henry Voss, not Jay Carver, inhabiting that seemingly perfect existence. 2 decades alongside Clara, constructing what I believed meaningful. I'd returned from construction sites, boots mud-covered, finding her there, immaculately presented, wine glass in hand, projecting superiority. Meanwhile, Owen would be upstairs, engrossed in his model automobiles, oblivious to our crumbling foundation. The collapse began gradually. Tom detected subtle changes. I explained, watching Miles' reaction. Insignificant details at first. Clara, his spouse, extending her hours at the real estate office. Her phone vibrating at unusual times. Her swift exits to the deck for private conversations. His inquiries met with dismissive responses. Business demands, she claimed. Always business. Until he discovered the messages. That rainy Tuesday evening, the downpour assaulting the roof with relentless fury changed everything. Borrowing her phone to check weather updates, I encountered Greg Palmer's message, my site supervisor. "Tomorrow for dinner," anticipating our meeting. My insides knotted painfully. Scrolling revealed weeks of their clandestine arrangements, their shared mockery of my existence. I confronted her that night, my voice unsteady, the storm's intensity drowning out neighboring sounds. She attempted denial, claimed paranoia, but her evasive gaze betrayed her guilt, reminiscent of cornered prey. Miles' attention intensified, his knife momentarily still. His response, he questioned. I offered a bitter smile. He gathered evidence. Engaged a former law enforcement officer turned private investigator to monitor her movements. Within 7 days, proof materialized. Photographs captured them at an obscure bar, her fingers lingering on his arm. Then surveillance footage, though grainy, clearly showed their entry into a motel along Interstate 5. Her discretion proved remarkably lacking. The recollection remained raw. From my truck outside the office, through rain-streaked windows, I witnessed that footage. Greg's arrogant demeanor as he held the door. Clara's laughter, cutting and indifferent, nullifying our shared history. 2 decades discarded for someone whose construction skills were mediocre at best. Rage suggested destruction, but calculation prevailed. Tom demonstrated cunning, I informed Miles. He orchestrated financial maneuvers with precision, maintained a concealed account, discreetly redirected company funds before its sale. The bankruptcy narrative convinced everyone, while he secured sufficient resources for reinvention, left the property in her possession, allowing her perceived victory. Then, one stormy night, he departed with minimal belongings, vanishing into the darkness, severing all connections permanently. That night haunted my thoughts like a recurring nightmare. I waited until Clara's breathing steadied beneath the storm's persistent drone, confirming her slumber. Owen, mercifully, stayed at a friend's house. With calculated movements, I filled a duffel with essentials, pausing to absorb one final glimpse of our shared space. The office housing my architectural designs, the kitchen where countless family meals created memories. Depositing my keys on the counter, I stepped into the torrential rain and climbed in my recently acquired vehicle, a weathered Chevrolet registered under J. Carver. Within 3 days, I'd secured employment at an Arizona factory. Miles drummed his fingers against the table, his gaze intensifying. Seems like a man with a meticulous plan. But why choose disappearance over divorce? I maintained a casual demeanor, shrugging. Divorce meant equal division. She'd claim half, possibly more, while maintaining an unwanted presence in his life. Plus, her manipulative nature would twist the narrative. Vanishing offered a cleaner break. His nod was contemplative, assembling the puzzle pieces. The boy. What became of him? The mention of Owen triggered a profound ache. His love for the child never wavered, I explained. He'd send occasional letters, confirming his well-being. Location details remained undisclosed, too risky. The diner's neon sign pulsed erratically, casting shifting shadows across Miles' features. My narrative, while compelling, concealed deeper truths. He remained unaware of my moment in that truck, rain seeping through my jacket, wrestling with thoughts of Owen's potential future hatred, or the near return, overcome by the engine's roar as I pressed forward. Miles finally secured his knife. Your friend's story, he remarked, suspicion lacing his words, bears striking resemblance to yours, Jake. I held his gaze steadily. Perhaps, but Tom's vanished while I remain. What's our next move? His delayed response and scrutinizing stare confirmed his continued investigation. The past wasn't merely approaching, it was forcefully announcing its presence. Tension filled the space between us, rivaling the desert's oppressive heat pressing against Desert Diner's fractured windows. Miles Tanner reclined in the booth, his concealed knife forgotten, but his gaze remaining sharp as steel. While Tom's tale provided temporary relief, I recognized the analytical wheels turning behind his eyes. Skepticism lingered. The neon's buzz intensified, matching my thundering heartbeat. My fingers remained near the wrench's cold surface, prepared for any outcome. Fascinating story, Jake, Miles drawled, his voice cutting like a blade through silk. But let's drop the pretense. I've tracked you far too long to buy this friend from Seattle narrative. You're Henry Voss, we both know that truth. I managed a calculated smirk, tilting my head just enough to project uncertainty. That's quite an imagination you've got, Tanner. Perhaps novel writing would suit you better than detective work. His expression remained stone cold. With deliberate slowness, he reached into his jacket again, extracting a carefully folded document. He smoothed it across the table's surface, revealing a weathered bank statement. There's my name, Henry Voss, linked to a shared account with Clara. A transaction marked in crimson, dated 72 hours before my Seattle departure. Despite my constricting throat, I maintained an impassive expression. Anyone can forge documents, I countered. That proves nothing. Miles jabbed the paper with his skeletal finger. Maybe not legally, but it's sufficient evidence for me. Clara isn't just another bitter ex-wife nursing her wounds. She's destitute, Henry. That lakeside mansion snatched up by some tech mogul after foreclosure. Her real estate career terminated when they discovered her embezzlement. Now she's holed up in a cramped studio on Aurora Avenue, hiding behind drawn curtains, surrounded by empty bottles. I forced a hollow laugh, concealing my internal turmoil. Sounds like karma finally caught up with her. Why should that concern me? Miles' eyes flickered with calculated coldness. Because she's not finished. Remember Voss Construction? She's uncovered some old contracts, claims they hold value. Your signature's the key to unlocking them. Without it, she's left with nothing. She spent her last dollar hiring me to find you. The bitter irony struck deep. Voss Construction, my life's work, reduced to leverage by someone who never contributed to its success. I'd sold it at a discount to my shell corporation, or so I thought. Had I overlooked something? Had she discovered a vulnerability? Leaning forward, I whispered, if I were this Henry character, what motivation would I have to return a finance or lifestyle after her? Betrayal. Your pitch needs work, Tanner. His coffee-stained grin spread slowly. This isn't a sales pitch. It's about pressure. She's retained legal counsel, some questionable ambulance chaser. They're investigating your disappearance. Fraud charges loom, possibly tax evasion too. She believes once I bring you to Seattle, you'll have no choice. Either sign those papers or face the consequences. A chill crept down my spine. Fraud accusations. Despite my meticulous precautions, cash transactions, maintaining a low profile, they could still fabricate charges. Clara had always excelled at manipulating facts to her advantage. The diner's clock caught my attention, its hands inching toward midnight. Hank busied himself stacking chairs, casting suspicious glances our way, clearly eager to close up. Time was running out, and Miles knew he held the advantage. I pushed the bank statement back across the table. Clever narrative, but it doesn't prove I'm Henry Voss. Your evidence won't hold up. He calmly folded the document, tucking it away. Don't need concrete proof to disrupt your life, Jake. One police report, and I'll swarm this place. Ready to take that gamble. That's when I decided to shift the power dynamic. Silently, I retrieved the wrench from my pocket, placing it on the table with deliberate gentleness. The worn steel glinted under the neon lights, conveying an unspoken threat. Miles' smug expression vanished instantly. I moved closer, speaking in hushed tones. Playing dirty works both ways, Tanner. Push harder, and things turn ugly. Clara's wishes mean nothing to me. I'm staying right here. His fingers twitched toward his jacket, but hesitated, fixated on a wrench. For a moment, I wondered if he'd test my resolve. Then he released a sharp, unsteady breath and slid from the booth. You're resilient, I'll give you that, he admitted, standing. But don't think this ends here. Clara never backs down. Neither do I. He tossed a wrinkled $10 bill onto the table, payment for a threat unfulfilled, and headed toward the exit. I watched his departure, maintaining my grip on the wrench. The neon lights flickered overhead, casting elongated shadows across the deserted diner. Clara might be temporarily thwarted, but she wasn't finished, and Miles's return was inevitable. I could sense it instinctively. Miles Tanner's footsteps resonated against the linoleum as he exited Desert Diner, the door groaning shut behind him. The neon sign outside sputtered intermittently, its rosy glow dissolving into the pre-dawn light creeping along the highway. I remained seated, wrench still in hand, its solid presence offering little solace against my internal turbulence. Hank approached, grumbling as he flipped the open sign to closed. Everything okay, Jake? He inquired, clearly disinterested. I nodded, concealing the wrench. Yeah, just another night. He accepted this, without question, securing the door before retreating to the kitchen. But this was far from just another night. Miles had exposed a vulnerability in my carefully constructed facade, and through that breach, memories of my past life began seeping in. I picked up the crumpled $10 bill he'd carelessly tossed on the table, methodically smoothing its worn edges. His parting words, initially lost in the tension, now echoed clearly in my mind. Owen's studying in Tucson, he'd mentioned offhandedly. A college student now, missing his father. Tucson, merely 2 hours down the highway. My son, close enough that I could almost hear his gentle voice, reminiscing about those peaceful evenings when he'd inquire about my day, back when our world made sense. Those letters I'd sent were meant to shield him from worry, but now uncertainty gnawed at me. Had my disappearance filled him with hatred, or was he silently hoping for my return, waiting for explanations rising on stiff legs? I stepped into the night. The desert air carried a crisp chill, the highway stretching silent except for nature's subtle symphony of cricket songs. The thought tempted me. I could drive to Tucson tonight, see him, explain everything. Reality crashed back instantly. Miles knew about Owen. So did Clara. Any attempt to reach him would lead them straight to me. Her sleazy attorney would seize the opportunity, dragging me through legal proceedings, weaving whatever fabricated narrative she'd constructed. This life I'd painstakingly built from nothing would crumble. Leaning against the diner's weathered brick wall, feeling its rough surface press into my back, I retrieved a battered pack of cigarettes from my jacket. Though not a regular habit, tonight demanded it. The match sparked to life, its flame dancing momentarily before igniting the cigarette. Clara's predicament suddenly crystallized in my mind, clear as the smoke spiraling skyward. She'd risked everything in her pursuit and lost it all. That squalid single room on Aurora Avenue, the empty bottles Miles had mentioned, they painted a portrait of desperate decay. She'd hunted me seeking financial gain, but I'd left her nothing to claim. Voss Construction's contracts worthless without my signature, buried beneath layers of carefully orchestrated fake transactions. She would remain there, isolated, consumed by her own avarice. Owen, however, represented the true sacrifice. He'd mature without a father's guidance, constructing an image of me from fragmented letters and fading memories. Perhaps he'd harbor resentment, or maybe someday understand. I'd secured his future before vanishing, channeling funds from a hidden account into an untraceable trust. It was all I could offer now. Drawing deeply on the cigarette, feeling the smoke's harsh bite, I made my decision. One final letter. Tomorrow, I find a post office, compose a note expressing my pride and love. No return address, no empty promises, just enough hope to sustain him. Miles wasn't the type to surrender easily. He'd return to Clara without success, but a man of his persistence would keep searching for any financial trail. Phoenix would be his hunting ground, and I'd likely become his shadow's companion. Soon, I need to relocate, seek out another anonymous town, another unremarkable factory. The thought settled like lead in my chest, though it wasn't unfamiliar territory. I extinguished the cigarette beneath my boot, watching the ember die. This was the cost of maintaining my freedom, a price tag I'd grown accustomed to reading. Standing in the diner's shadow, I contemplated the broader picture. Clara's downfall was self-inflicted, the natural conclusion to her own choices. Owen's absence was my cross to bear, a persistent ache that time wouldn't dull. As for me, I'd continue this nomadic existence, not from desire, but from necessity. It was the only way to preserve what remained of myself. Life, I'd learned, doesn't deal fair hands. It throws challenges your way, regardless of your readiness to face them. I'd chosen this path of departure, salvaging what little remained, and despite the emotional toll, I knew I'd make the same choice again. Dawn's first light crept across the desert landscape, transforming the sand into sheets of gold. I settled into my truck's familiar seat, the engine's steady growl matching my resolve as I left Desert Diner, diminishing in my rearview mirror. Whatever destination awaited me, I carried one unchanging truth. While the past remains an ever-present shadow, you alone choose how to confront its presence. The journey today has come to an end. Did you find this ending satisfying, or did it catch you off guard? Let us know how you feel right below. If you love this story, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe so you won't miss the next adventure. Thanks for sticking with us, and see you in the next tale.